In a small village surrounded by green fields and dusty paths, lived an old woman named Margaret. She was almost 80, with silver hair tied neatly in a bun, and a smile untouched by time or sorrow. Her humble mud brick house stood under a great oak tree. Inside there were only the basics: 2 clay pots of water, a single stove for cooking, and a wooden cot in the corner that creaked with every breeze. She lived alone. Her husband had died 3 decades ago, and her only son had left for the city in search of work, never to return. The villagers often whispered, "Oh, Margaret, alone, forgotten," and yet she smiles as if she carries no weight at all. That summer, Emily, a 20-year-old girl from New York, came to visit her grandfather in the village. Emily carried wounds no one could see. She had failed her medical entrance exam, her closest friend had betrayed her trust, and her parents never stopped comparing her to others. Every evening she sat alone, numb and defeated, whispering to herself, "Why is life so cruel to me?" One morning as Emily passed beneath the oak tree, she noticed Margaret feeding leftover rice to the birds while humming an old tune. Her eyes sparkled with calm and she smiled at everyone who walked by, even those who ignored her. Emily kept watching this ritual for days, her curiosity growing. At last, one quiet evening she gathered the courage to approach. "Grandmother, can I sit with you for a while?" she asked shyly. Margaret's face lit up. "Of course, dear, come. The oak tree gives the best shade at this hour." They sat in silence until Emily finally spoke. "Grandmother, you have no one. You've been through so much, and yet you smile as if your heart has never broken." "How?" Margaret chuckled softly. "Ah, child, I was not born with this smile. It came after many storms. Would you like to hear my story?" Emily nodded, her eyes wide. "When I was your age, I married a kind man. We had nothing but love. Our son was our joy. But fate is never predictable. One winter my husband fell ill. There was no hospital nearby and I had no money for treatment. He died in my arms, whispering, 'Stay strong, Margaret.' I wanted to die with him, but I lived for my son. I cleaned homes, washed clothes, even begged at times just to feed him and send him to school. Years later he found work in the city and left. I waited for his letters, his calls, but they stopped. He married and perhaps he forgot I exist." Emily gasped. "You never went to find him?" "I did once," Margaret replied, her eyes distant. "He had a new life, a family of his own. I stood across the street from his flat. Then I walked away. Sometimes love means letting go with grace." Tears filled Emily's eyes. "But don't you feel angry, lonely, betrayed?" Margaret smiled again, that same calm, unshakable smile. "I did, until I discovered 3 truths that saved me. Let me share them with you." She raised her fingers gently. 1. Accept what you cannot change. I cannot force Daniel to remember me, but I can refuse to let bitterness eat me alive. I chose peace instead of pain. 2. Be thankful for what you have. I may not have riches, but I have these birds, this tree, the sky above, and a heart that still feels. Gratitude is not for the wealthy, it is for the awake. 3. Give more than you take. I feed birds, help children with their lessons, and share herbs with the sick. Giving makes me feel alive, like I still matter. Emily sat silently, as though 1,000 knots inside her chest were slowly loosening. The sun sank behind the trees and the birds sang their way back home. For the first time in weeks she smiled. "Grandmother, thank you," she whispered, holding Margaret's hand. "You've healed something in me tonight." That night they sat under the stars, sharing stories, laughter, and even tears. When Emily returned to New York, her challenges did not vanish, but something deep inside her had shifted. She began each morning with a small prayer of gratitude, stopped chasing those who had left her, and started helping people who silently suffered, just as she once did. Happiness, she realized, is not the absence of pain, but the presence of purpose. Life will never be free from sorrow, loss, or disappointment. But we always have a choice in how we respond. Margaret's story shows us that peace is not given by perfect conditions. It is built slowly, through accepting what cannot be changed, being grateful for what remains, and showing kindness even while we are hurting. Too often we wait for life to get better before we allow ourselves to smile. But sometimes, life gets better because we choose to smile. In the quiet moments, in the simple act of giving, and in the courage to let go without hatred, we discover a joy that no one can take away. Choose that joy, not because life is easy but because your heart deserves peace.